Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Elections 2023 is Caliphate push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's joint Nina's Clubhouse session. We'll be listening to a Nina's broadcast entitled Caliphate North's Food Embargo on the South, a welcome catalyst to Union Reset. Thank you for listening.
In the midst of the union disputes, it has been declared by way of constitutional force majeure since December of 2020. We saw the outcome of the election. We plunged onto leaving the dispute unresolved, degenerating into where trucks carrying food were prevented from crossing into the south from the north. The governor, I think it was in Niger State or somewhere there, was saying that they have to keep everything they have for themselves. That's the front side of the story. The back side of the story is that there is a north and there's a south. We know all the delineations, the middle belts that is now being presented as north, and we also know that there was never a single southern administration in the sense that the north had under the northern region of the time. The what's of concern to us here is the fact that we are caught in a union where our hands and legs are tied to the back by people who then turn around to take advantage of what they've created. Yes, food production, there could be land mass, wonderful. But it doesn't end, it doesn't start and end with landmass. If you go back to the regions before 66, Eastern region was leading. Malaysia, all those Asian tigers came to copy from what the Eastern region of the time was doing under Emir Obara. Even concerning agriculture, it was from Eastern region that the palm seedlings were taken to start what has become the leading global palm oil producer, Malaysia today. And so this north, we are digging, we are cutting through the layers of pretenses to the core of what we are up against. Starvation as weapon of war, laying siege and trying to treasure a population into submission by starvation and all kinds of other shenanigans relating to food. Let us remember, look at this map, let us bear at every point in time our gauge for measuring is this map and what happens, because we're talking about lands and peoples, what's going on those lands. That north that built irrigation systems for themselves using money from the treasury of the south, that north that did all kinds of arrangements about fertilizer for themselves to the exclusion of everybody else. Otherwise, tell me who else has been part of managing fertilizer business here in Nigeria other than that north. That north, even as recent as a Mefele headship of Central Bank, that constantly took money from the treasury to give to farmers to go and perform miracle, all in the name of guaranteeing food security for all of us. That north that went to bring terror, infested our forests with terror. Fulani that had been brought in from 16 different countries all over the place. So they rendered our farmers incapable of carrying on with farming because, you know, somebody was waiting there to kill you in the forest. Their brothers and, you know, cousins who are controlling the armed forces of Nigeria, they wear the uniform, stay at the front while the atrocity is going on right behind them. Ask the Methodist prelate, or you know, the one they kidnapped in some place in Abia or Kigwe area. The military checkpoint was there. Find out who was the command, the local command. And they were doing the kidnap. Everywhere you see kidnapping business, in those stretches that they become endemic, you go look around, you will see no less than no more than two minutes maneuver. Whether you're tracking or you could even be trekking, not even driving. You will see the military or police checkpoint that is the cover, and that's when you bring the ransom. That's where it is shared. So we're saying that these people deliberately made it impossible for others to farm. Because if your forests and farmlands are rendered so dangerous deliberately by the people who do not want you to farm, and then suddenly they load you can no longer sell to anybody. We're all in this stupid actions, and I repeat, stupid actions, hastening the demise of the Nigeria that was already bleeding to death by itself. And nobody is bothered about Nigeria. We're only saying the process of managing the terminal stages of the failed Ugandan experience on the tournament of 1914. We have a plan on the table for how to go to resolve what can be resolved, so that people can take their portions and begin to feed their people and do other things they can do for themselves. Nigeria has become a liability that the constituent components can no longer carry. Unitary Nigeria has become a liability that the constituent components of Nigeria can no longer carry. And when we put everybody on the map, where they come from, what they are doing, for what motive, and against who, we will see clearly the same picture emerging of orchestrations by one side against the other in a manner that renders a union impossible. A federation is supposed to be a symbiosis, enhancing the livelihoods of those federating. But if it becomes a toxic, what do you call it when parasitism, toxic parasitism. That's what Nigeria has become for those whose oil and gas are to be taken forcefully and shared to people who normally will have no stake in a federation in that asset. Where taxes are collected in one part and shared lavishly to those who do not pay, who actually reject productive ventures that could lead to tax. They don't drink beer, but they take money from the ones who get drunk. So in all of it, this deceit will only result in more disaster. Everybody can feed themselves if we remove the shackles. This constitutional arrangement that one part is clinging to with all their might. Look at this map. The alliance of the rest of Nigeria already agreed that this document is not serving them any purpose. But the ones who embraced Sharia and stepped away into their own, just seceding from the secular union we thought we were building, are clinging tenaciously to that. Unfortunately for us, there are, renegades from the alliance territories that joined them in holding on to that, swearing to defend and uphold that constitution. There must be an end to buffoonery, to this stupidity. It's plain stupid, hoping to kick Nigeria by force. It's not going to work. And if you doubt me, get on Google, search the title, Nigeria's unity in the balance. So Nigeria's unity in the balance. I repeat, Nigeria's unity in the balance. So that you can hear what the US military that took time to investigate what we're saying about what is happening with Nigeria, what they reported to their government, 60 what? Yes, that report by the U.S. Army War College in Pennsylvania in the period leading to 2013, I think it was June 2013, at the time we were, consulting with international stakeholders in the affairs of Nigeria, the owners of, Chevron and Mobil and Halliburton and all the others, to say, look, this is what's going on in our space that could become a little more problematic so we can understand it. And then they began to investigate it because the Washington of the time was busy, chasing after other things. So the military listened and told Washington to get ready to deal with this matter. They said that they described what we were doing as centrifugal forces that wanted to dismantle for reconstruction the union that was imposed on all of us by Britain. Centrifugal. And they said that those who are trying to dismantle for reconstruction have become stronger and better organized than the ones who are trying to keep Nigeria won by force. If anybody has seen what Ninas has done in this period, in the time we are, presently in, go to that report, you will then understand how we got here. That there was a conscious effort by those who are the victims of this invasion by that caliphate that has now progressed all the way to let us starve them, let us show them we can keep them without food. You lay siege to our land, you arm yourself in monopoly against us, you seize all our economic assets, you seize all the powers to work those economic assets. I have coal, I can't generate electricity. I have crude oil, I can't refine any part of it for my, I can't generate even there's nothing I can do for myself. I can't do my roads in the highways, I can't do my railway, I have the body of water, I can't build my own ports and operate my own systems in the manner that would have worked better for me, because you took everything and bunched into 68 items that now are exclusive to you. I can't organize my security because arms and ammunition you hold such in monopoly, and you think it's going to, then you begin to parcel it out. You go and do this, you go and do that, then go and refine for them, go and do Intel and run the port for them. All kinds of nonsense everywhere you look. That's why nothing is working. It's not sustainable. The earlier we stop and come back to our senses, the better. Drop it there.
Thank you for listening. We'll go on to take the synopsis of the topic. Mr. Rawaju, please, you have the floor to take the synopsis. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are all welcome once again to Niger Delta Ninas on Clubhouse. Tonight, we continue once again in this all-important assignment of targeted engagements and advocacy, aimed principally at enlightening the peoples of the various indigenous ethnic nationalities and showing them the clear path to the solution to the problem of Nigeria as enunciated by Ninas. As we all know, the key issue here is the now discredited 1999 Constitution, which was criminally and disingenuously foisted on us and employed as a technology of control and conquest by the Fulani Caliphate. Empowered in this criminal enterprise, a perpetual lockdown and absolute control of our commonwealth and a crippling economy is now what they have bequeathed to us. The words and actions of the Fulani Caliphate, steeped in their continued conquest agenda, can scarcely conceal their utter disdain and disregard for the ethnic nationalities who have been subdued and subjugated for so long. Quite recently, the declaration by the governor of Niger State, Embargo, placing an embargo on the movement of food from a state to the eastern and southern states of Nigeria is but a sneak peek into the inner workings of the mind of a fascist megalomaniac. He went further to threaten to seize and confiscate any foods transporters' goods, regardless of the fact that these are private business persons whose livelihoods in the long run depend on them being able to sell their wares and commodities. It is in fact a painful flashback of the events of the Biafra War, when the Caliphate, with the active connivance of the British Crown, weaponized hunger and starvation and the resultant genocide of hapless women and children. This action should serve as an eye-opener and in fact spur us on to the realization that we have no path, and indeed we have no leak in this current contraction, so style as a nation. They have contrived to destroy the once burgeoning agricultural economy of the eastern and southern ethnic nationalities, and now pushed to the front burner and center the exploitation of our petroleum resources, which they are firmly held in a stranglehold with the help of the 1999 Constitution, their technology of control and domination. But now what they meant to use as an instrument of punishment, as it were, has thoroughly backfired to expose their criminal enterprise. And I believe this will serve to enlighten and galvanize the peoples of our oppressed ethnic nationalities to enforce a timely jailbreak and freedom for our peoples. At this point, I yield the mic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rawaju, for that. It's my honor to introduce the NINA spokesperson, Mr. Tony Nadi, to shed more light on today's topic, Caliphate North's food embargo on the South, a welcome catalyst to union reset. Please, Mr. Nadi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I'm coming through.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We have just listened to a broadcast pointing at the specifics of what are being done by this same set of people. The synopsis also, touched on some of those things. Now, we gather here every week not to come and lament. We actually discussing the actions we can take, we are taking, we are planning to take in self-redemption. I'm sure we recall that on the 3rd anniversary of the 2020 Constitutional Force Majeure Proclamation, that we in December, NINAS in December of 2023, did say that there will be an altar call in the first quarter of 2024. First quarter will end midnight of 31st of March. We are 26 or so today. And so finishing touches now being put to what that altar call will be. That altar call is to receive into our fold the many who now agree with NINAS that we cannot continue under the yoke of this constitution. If our people will do the little we ask them to do, we've not asked them to do any heavy thing, and probably that may even be why they think, oh, we are not doing riots, therefore. But they are not looking now to see that there is no amount of riot that will have gotten the Fulani into the situation they are in now. If you had gone to try to do riot, what you saw in eastern Nigeria with the IPOB and the Biafra restoration, gambit, will be as we saw in Ogoni when Ken Sarowa thought he could restore Ogoni all by itself, or even the jaw that witnessed the OD, the Okerenkoko, and all such other massacres because people, acted in isolation. So the system is a big monster that is able to circle up and contain. At the time they're circling you up, they will find flawed characters from your space, whom they will offer some carrots to be on their side. The governors and the senators and the ministers and council chairmen and the assemblymen who swear to defend and uphold that instrument by which the rest are held down, you can see the kind of humongous personal benefits that come to them. So they are not on your side of this discussion. And so I want us to more purposefully measure what progress we have made. Looking at what has happened between the National Assembly that advertised their intention to go and write another constitution and their agents who converged in Lagos to give some kind of public imprimatur to what they were planning to do. They actually wanted to smuggle that 2014 conference report into the space as the decision of the peoples of Nigeria. They are trying to say, knowing fully well that Ninas has now broken through the barricades to insist on the sovereignties that were confiscated being restored in the sense of the owners of those sovereignties, because it's all about land and peoples. Peoples in the sense of distinct ethnic nations occupying ancestral lands. That's what, that's what becomes sovereignty. It is to distinct nations occupying their ancestral spaces that sovereignty attached. And so the British came, hijacked these sovereignties and consolidated it without reference in 1914, without reference to the owners of the sovereignties with whom they signed treaties prior to the amalgamation. At the point of amalgamation, what started as guile progressed to brute force, because you just woke up and you are told you are now in Nigeria. There were protests in Lagos. Go and check the records. When they woke up to that amalgamation, there were protests that they had to put down. Whereas there was a Doba in Zungeru and Sokoto. They had various, Doba is the highest form of celebration you find in the Caliphate, space. They celebrated Doba in Zungeru, which was the seat of the colonial government of the time, and Sokoto, the seat of the Caliphate. What were they celebrating? You go back to 1913 telegram of Harcourt, who was then secretary for the colonies, to whom Lugard had to report that the office in London that was in charge of what they were doing in India, in Nigeria, and all the many places they were governing at the time. And so Harcourt, in a telegram of December 1913, when the story of what they were planning to do in Nigeria had leaked, it was leaked by a German newspaper, on Boxing Day. And people then began to ask, people who you could call the media today, say, Secretary, what are we hearing? He responded, because in those days, questions could be sent to you and they still do it. You then answer in writing, as then they will publish. It used to be by telegram. So they send you send back, and they go to press, and it becomes the news the next morning. So it was in that response, arising from the question that came when that news leak had been done by a German newspaper that reported the issue on the 26th of December, the Boxing Day of 1913, that the Nigeria that was in 3 compartments of the time, the Northern Protectorate, the Southern Protectorate, and the Colony of Lagos. The Colony of Lagos was by itself, was a British territory that operated under a separate set of laws comparable to what they had in England. In the other places, with different degrees of modifications. In the north, they allowed the emirs and their system, which they now describe as indirect rule. And in the south, because of the resistance they got from all the places in the south, they imposed what you could call military rule, which was the direct. They sent district officers, and their enforcers were the ones in government house. And the renegades, the local willing tools, they manage this traditional in the east. All these people you see, Royal Highness left and right all across the east, they were warrant chiefs. These are the worst of society that the British decided to coronate as spies and people who are going to be their own agents. Like they did with the police constabulary, they set up that. The people who are going to carry guns were the people the community had rejected. So that anger they had to put their loyalty on the side of the British that had come to make them. So both the law enforcement and the traditional ruler, the traditional rulers, the coronet. These were all the mechanisms. They retained what they wanted to retain in one part. They destroyed completely. They destroyed the local, the governance structures, the traditional governance structures in the East were completely decimated and replaced by bogus. So I can tell you, in many of the places, most of our people don't know who is part of all this Royal Highness. It's in the media. It doesn't exist in our midst. It was the British that imposed them on us as people who will take a portion of what those in government house get to spy on their people. That's what they do. That's why they allotted 5% of the local government, whatever the local government gets in allocation. These people you call your traditional rulers, they share 5% of it. So that 5%, if you're a retired school principal, for instance, maybe your pension will still be floating below 100,000 naira. If the local government gets allocation of 100 or 200 million, the average they get every month, you can imagine 5% of it to whoever is paramount ruler in the area. There could be 2 of them. At times, there could be 3 local governments that fall under one paramount ruler. But there could also be 1 local government that has more than 1. But when you take 5%, of 200 million, 10% of it is 20 million. 5% of it is 10 million. That's the kind of assured remuneration that comes to those people who parade themselves as your traditional rulers. And the government, in return, relies on them to spy on you. They are never. That's why you won't see any of them. Not that we didn't go to look for them. We went to look for them all over the place. They are not on our side. We are breaking down the mechanisms so that you can know the forces, the politicians that swear to defend and uphold this constitution. Those ones you can see from afar. But the ones who present themselves as your own, you now think indigenous people, you can see that in the Yoruba space, in the Igbo space, you can't find any meaningful traditional ruler who is on the side of the people for good. Look at where they are when the matters turn up in terms of between what Nigeria wants and what their people want. It's always what Nigeria wants that they stand with. I'm giving you the background to it. The British that came took their time to destroy what they could destroy, retained what they wanted to retain. The indirect rule they did in the north was that the Caliphate, the Emirate system, in which the Sultan now is a head, you know, they allow them to keep, because they already subjugated the people in a feudal setting. England itself, the UK itself, the British crown is a feudalist setting. But for that reason, they didn't have to disrupt something that has locked the people down. Rather, they empowered the emirs some more, gave them more guns to beat down the people. So that between them and the emirs, when the door is closed, the white man is in charge. When the people are not looking, once that door is closed, the emir is taking instruction. If you go back to the pyramid of evil, you will see that we indicated that in that hierarchy, the British and their government are the top. The Caliphate next, that nobody speaks up, nobody argues with the one up. So the Caliphate does not argue with England. They take whatever London says. Then between the two of them, London will dictate what will go into constitution, because London is concealing itself from the people who are suffering. In that hierarchy, the constitution sitting below the Caliphate. That's why they're operating above your constitution. The constitution is in place to put you down. They are not bound by it. They are not bound by that constitution. You saw the Supreme Court, you saw the Court of Appeal, you saw Jega, not Mahmoud, the one that coronated Tinubu in the last election. They are not bound by your constitution. Otherwise, I could raise 20 questions even in this meeting of where was the constitution when ABC so happened? Where was the constitution that says everybody has to be treated equally, that there will be welfare and security, that there will be all kinds of good things for the citizen? The same them overruled what they wrote into the document with another small clause that they didn't advertise, and you see lawyers who jump all over the place trying to pretend that there's something that is the entitlement of the citizen on that. Nobody's citizens. Slaves are not citizens. Under this constitution, that your sovereignty is taken, all your economic assets taken, and the exclusive lists that make it impossible for you to even partake in any way. With something, a blanket immunity that goes from section 6D, the one that says everything they did from the 15th of January in 1966 to the 29th of May in 1999. That's 33 whole years. During which period all the decrees that became constitution in 1979 were instituted. All the things they did to rot this evil were done in those 33 years. The oil and gas assets of the Niger Delta, it was in that period that they took those things and awarded to themselves as oil blocks. It was in that period that they created all these states. It was in that period they had to kill this number of people that we're still discussing today. The ones who killed Hiroshi, the ones who killed the 3.5 million people in the East, the ones that starved 2 million plus children to death.
But this same thing they are reminding us, like the synopsis told us. If anybody will remember the story in the Bible about the siege on Samaria by Syria, these people that are on a conquest mission, they are weakening us from several fronts. But when you now drag it all the way down to food, then you can be sure that that weakening also targets extermination. And our people are still sleeping, knowing that people are orchestrating these things. It wasn't overnight that our farmers, they didn't just become lazy and stop farming. It was because farming was rendered very dangerous. You went to farm, you were not sure you come back. Meanwhile, they had equipped their own, they had done all the irrigations with our money. I don't know who and who has irrigation in their own parts in these alliance territories. All the irrigations in the name of having less number of rivers and bodies of water. They had always look at the list of those who have been ministers for agriculture from the last across the last 50 years. Look at the list of those who have been ministers for water resources across the last 50 years. So they control fertilizer because they will never allow anybody. Those are some of the portfolios that they don't share with anybody. And so you see the river basin authorities. These are all the things they instituted from the days of the military, even into the civilian era. Check, even when Obasanjo came, even when because they will not because they control the back end of everything that will happen. All those who stand in front, Obasanjo president, Jonathan president, Tinubu president. The matters are deeper than Peter Obi that is hoping to come in that doesn't understand the head and tail of anything, citing statistics of Bangladesh. So I'm touching on all of this to let us know that we have a clear understanding of the hidden mechanisms by which they have managed to hold our people down for this length of time. We had it was part of our strategy not to shout about those things until we hit the major target, which is the constitution into which they domiciled all those control mechanisms, all those confiscating mechanisms, all those enshackling mechanisms, all those expropriating mechanisms. Most unfortunately for them, they put our signature at the base of the document in that preamble to say that we, the people, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live together, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. So all of what they got from before 1914, because we were already tied up. We were already tied up before 1914. 1914 was when they handed us over, they annexed us, they annexed southern Nigeria to northern Nigeria, back to Harcourt. When Harcourt was asked in that telegram, he says, we have freed that is explaining that they're about to betroth. You know how you take a child and hand over to an older person to say, this girl will be your wife from the time the girl may be 5 years or any, or less or more, but less than the age of marriage. And then you hand the child over in betrothal to an adult male. Let me read from that telegram of 1913. I quote, that is Lord Harcourt, the one after whom, the criminal after whom Port Harcourt is named. He says, we have released northern Nigeria from the leading strings of the treasury. The promising and well-conducted youth is now on an allowance of his own and is about to effect an alliance with a southern lady of means. I have issued the special license and Sir Frederick Lugard will perform the ceremony. May the union be fruitful and the couple constant. End of quote. Secretary of the colonies, Harcourt, who is the boss of Frederick Lugard, referring to the import and purport of the annexation of the then Protectorate of Southern Nigeria to then Protectorate of Northern Nigeria, cablegram of 31st December 1913, just the day before it was announced, the amalgamation was announced on the 1st of January of 1914. The reason I'm reading this is to 1914 to 2024 is 110 years already. It was in celebration of, so we can understand how we got into this and how the enemy had managed to keep us where they wanted us in that joint venture with the British, in which the British is leading the Caliphate. I will still come down to the mask of the alliance of 1967 by which that Caliphate has been able to sustain the last 55 years of this bondage. We are touching on all of this so that our people can understand our disposition. The reason we are going to be very hard on our own people, it is our own people that made it possible for them to keep us this long. It is our own people who decided to go to make profit for themselves that didn't mind what all the other everybody else was doing to try to liberate the entire community. That is how they, so that alliance of 1967 was the reinforcement of that caliphate, bringing in renegade elements from the Yoruba flank, from the coastal east, and even from the core, from the South Igbo of the core of the east, the Dottin Seko. They always have renegade elements. The Benjamin Kalu that wants to go and write new constitution today, the Oji Kalu that have been with them in every wearing turban, the Rochas Okorocha that have been with them, and several others. The one that wrote the 1976 draft for them that became constitution. The Olisabakoba that is guiding them today. Without all these people, they wouldn't have gotten this far. The Obasanjo that overruled even the Constituent Assembly by the 17 amendments he announced to the finished work of the Constituent Assembly. Shame on the media in Nigeria that continues to parade their ignorance. I'm sure some of us, is there anybody present in this meeting who saw the interview on Channel TV of Victor Atta with the crew of I can't remember their names now, the lady Mogbe and the other fellow. They were talking of this 1979 constitution as something that was done by the people, and that the government took time to get a discussion going in 1999 when they set up Nikki Tobikob. They were telling the story of how most people insisted that they will go back to 1979, which the government then did. What is wrong with that? Is it not a Constituent Assembly that did all of what was done in 1979? That's what journalists that went to school, that have been listening to what we have been saying across the last 24 years, are saying inside March of 2024 on national television. Whereas we know for certain that the 1977 Constituent Assembly, the one person that wrote the draft for Murtala Mohammed at the invitation of Rotimi Williams, you can see who and who. Rotimi Williams is commissioned by Murtala Mohammed, on behalf of the Caliphate, instructed, semi-literate he is. So that instruction, I have it on good authority, and I can actually name that instruction of what Murtala Mohammed handed over to Rotimi Williams came from England, came from the British end. Oh, we have won this war. You have to retain everything for yourself. Nobody, you can't share with anybody, so that we can have absolute control. Murtala Mohammed hands it over to Rotimi Williams. Rotimi Williams goes round, ends up with this university teacher called Ben Wabeze. And between them, they now made it even more watertight than the people intended. That's the confession, and that's the confession that Victor Atta was reading out at the Lagos colloquium of Ben Wabeze that did the writing. 75. That was the first task Murtala Mohammed gave out when he came. Using our own people for the benefits they got, because I know the ones that got bank chairmanship, Union Bank of the time, for doing that dirty task. Look at where we are today. Obasanjo did the finishing for them. Look at where we are today, because even the Constituent Assembly rejected the states that were created as basis of federate, as units to federate. In that 1977, they didn't want the retention of the state that Gowon created to fracture the four regions in circumstances that confiscated their assets into the hands of that illicit federal government that emerged. And so we are now unraveling all these things through and through in the lock, in the divine intervention of them putting our signature on the totality of these atrocities that took so long to put together, because they combined what the British had gotten for them with what they got from the war, with all of what they added in between those 33 years that they have claimed immunity under Section 6, subsection 6C of that Constitution. If anything happens to that Constitution today, if anything happens to that Constitution like it is already happening, the collapse of that Section 6, subsection 6D, immediately puts the class of 66, all those generals that killed all these people, that seized all the economic assets of everybody in the name of one concession or the other, oil block or port concession, and all kinds of things in between, that has brought this level of poverty that is ravaging Nigeria. Some are digging gold. Guzo and Co., National Security Advisor. All these things you see happening in Zamfara. They shared everything among themselves in consequence of their victory from the war. Well, everybody cooperated with them, thinking it's only the Igbo that will lose. But they knew where they were going. They used everybody to put down who they can put down, eventually turning around to the people that did the work for them. Where's Gowon today? What's happened to the Beron people? Where's David Mark today? David Mark was the chairman of the task force who threw out the Igbo from their properties in Port Harcourt. Look at the Doma people today, being slaughtered like ram and chicken. But David Mark is a multi-billionaire, flying in private jet and flying helicopter to work. The story is the same across board. These people deliberately destroyed all of what held us together, set their own kinds of boundaries, and got our own people to do the finishing for them. Because the Constituent Assembly that rejected the 12 states that Murtala Mohammed had made 19, they say no, let's go back to the regions by which we federated. We can moderate, but let it not be this kind of dismantling to take over the assets. The Constituent Assembly rejected the presidential system, that it will accumulate power in the manner we have seen. Constituent Assembly could not have touched land use decree that was imposed unilaterally. Constituent Assembly could not have approved the NYSC Act. That's another campaign that we're going to launch sooner than later. Let us finish with the urgent task. The NYSC decree of 1973, for those who have been proudly wearing their uniform of NYSC, you don't question anything. we had a problem that took us to war. War ended. Instead of going to solve the issues that are still unresolved to this date, these same issues we are raising today were the things that took us to war in 1967. How do we live together? Was that not the issue that they went to Aburi and agreed, and then they came back and go on and go abandoned it at the direction of the British and began to kill people, to lock everybody down into what we have seen now? Now, instead of going to solve that problem, you now set up a scheme in which you took young people who may not have been politically conscious when the trouble began, to say, let the young people mix up. The children of the north will come to the south and see their country. The children of the south will go to the north and see their country. And as they mix up, they will understand themselves better, and it will be El Dorado thereafter. That's the front. That's the front screen. At the back end, the NYSC was a scheme by which the children of Sokoto, the children of Kano, the children of Maiduguri were sent to go and serve in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Warri, where they will be retained after the service year in NNPC, in MPA, in Central Bank, and all such institutions. Whereas the children of Lagos, the children of Ibadan, the children of Warri, the children of Enugu, the children of Port Harcourt are sent to go and perish in Kaura Namoda, in Gashua, in Brinin, Kebi, wherever. And you get there, there is no prospect of any kind of job. You are taken to rural places to go to teach. 90% of the bureaucracy of how Nigeria is being managed, whether you went to NNPC or you went to Central Bank or you went to any of all these other places, the recruitment process was in that standing instruction of retain them when they come to serve in your place in Port Harcourt, and then they put it in that constitution. NYSC is in a part of the constitution that requires 4/5 majority. That is Land Use Act, NYSC Act. What was Land Use Decree? They called it Act when they imposed the constitution later. What was the NYSC? What was the Land Use Decree? The land ownership system in the north was one in which the emir owned everything, and gave only those he chose. If he didn't give you, he didn't get. In the south, it was different. Lands belonged to individuals and on some occasion communities. And so, if you worked hard, you got the quantity. Your family could inherit so much. You could buy so much, but all amongst right to private property. The north, this same caliphate, targeting the lands of the south and everybody else in the middle belt, decided to bring the land use decree in which government became the owner of all the lands. In that military era, the governors who were now to be holding, the governors were appointed, governor of your state could come from Kebbi, the governor of Imo could come from Zamfara, and all of that. So these generals, these genocide generals you see that are still hanging around like demons today, they took the choicest lands all across the length and breadth of Nigeria under that land use decree, which they then smuggled into that constitution by the instrumentality of Obasanjo that introduced 17 amendments after the Constituent Assembly had submitted its clean copy. 17 amendments. One such amendment is to restore for the Caliphate the states that the Constituent Assembly rejected as federating units instead of the regions. That was how we lost all our economic access. For the liars and charlatans that are spreading the story of how Ironsi did Ironsi Decree number 34 did not touch the structure of the Federation of Nigeria. Anybody from the South and Middle Belt who has education and who is spreading that falsehood that was crafted in Britain and nurtured in Sokoto will labor under the curse, because Ironsi had been killed on the 29th of July in 1966. Almost 1 year to the time on the 27th of May in 1967, when Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon did the bidding of his masters in the attempt to stop the East from declaring Biafra in 3 days from that point. That was the first time the 4 regions structure of the Federation of Nigeria was tampered with. 27th of May 1967. Ironsi only formed an administration, that's some kind of governance by the military, because the federal government had been decapitated. 2 of the regional governments have been, everything was in disarray, have been decapitated by those. The people that staged the coup did not get to power. Nzogbu and Co didn't get to power, they were stopped. Ironsi only happened to be the most senior military officer. He had to be the head, he was the head of the army. It fell on him to rally people back to some kind of so the governors were appointed for the 4 regions. That will tell you that the regions were still intact. Usman Katsina for the north, killed later for the west, Ojukwu in the east, Ejo in the midwest. These 4 military administrators, sitting with the head of the army, became the Supreme Military Council. Of course, they had the head of police and 2 other service chiefs joining them. That was what the Supreme Military Council was all about. That was the only governance. The parliament could not be functioning in the period where there's no government of civil rule. So they took over the functions of the parliament in that emergency to stabilize, to stop the killings and stabilize things. 6 months down the road, people who read their own meanings to say, oh, it was Igbo coup. Nigeria is dying today because Nigeria was trying to kill the Igbo on account of various falsehoods manufactured in England. You saw the German that was telling the story of what transpired. These things are falsehoods, and people with education from the south, because they think that once Igbo is killed, their life will be better. Look at what is happening all over the place. Dress back 50 years. In all these places where people are being slaughtered, look back through the years and see why people are being slaughtered in the various places that are being slaughtered today. If not for the lunatic that came to restore Biafra in the air, in the east, the east wouldn't have been, wouldn't have been at the receiving end of Nigeria, but for the madmen that say they want to restore the Biafra that has no boundary. At a time where we are putting the monster that is holding them down to death, they sabotaged that effort, and they went about killing our own people because they want to make money from dying people. So, where we are now, just to tell you that the people we are dealing with know what they are doing, but our own people refuse to know. It was that thing that Harcourt, that betrothal that Harcourt was talking about. That was what Ahmadu Bello was celebrating in 1960, at the time the British will now leave. Handing us over, we had been betrothed to them in 1914. The one that did the betrothal is going. Ahmadu Bello was now the one to receive the full control of all of us from them. And that was what he was celebrating when he told his lieutenants in the first week of independence in 1960 that the new nation called Nigeria should be an asset of their great-grandfather Uthman Danfodio, and that they must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. They use the minorities of the north as willing tools and the south as a conquered territory. Never allow them to rule over, allow us to rule over them. and never allow us to have control over our own future. These are the things that, he was telling them. He was as a Premier of Northern Nigeria, Sir Ahmadu Bello, celebrating the grand bequest by the British Crown. That grand bequest is that 1913 explanation that we were now, as the South, we were now being handed over to the North as they were described as Southern Lady of Means. We told us about how long they had extracted this and sold this, this oil that we are still dying over today. They sold for 50 years plus before they declared Oloibiri in 1957. If you doubt me, go and research Shell Diary, the name by which Shell was operating, and see how they could have come in 1957, but were regulated, that is, by the Crown in 1936. Go to their website, go to Shell website and see what they were doing in 1936. By which time the Crown was now coming to take a portion of their profit by way of regulation. Before then, they were operating just a charter and paying only what comes as tax. They were headquartered in Owerri for 42 years before going to Port Harcourt in 1960. What were they doing in Owerri in that massive facility? And people with education don't bother to look. They just take whatever they are told and continue to spread the falsehood that is putting millions of people to death, because Nigeria is a pile of lies. Everything you were told is a lie. So where we are today is that, as it has pleased God to free us from this bondage, the collapse, if there's anything you take from this meeting, it is that the collapse of the 1999 Constitution, the amalgamation of 1999, is the termination of the unitary union anchored upon that Constitution. That this union is at an end. The fact that we have successfully delegitimized the basis of the 1999 Constitution such that the National Assembly is now talking about writing a new constitution. We don't need to hear any further thing from them, because they do not have the constituent powers to write constitution for us. And for those who gathered in the ones who gathered in Lagos to recommend our new constitution, Nina's campaign is not for writing of new constitution. Nina's campaign is to take down the fraud of the 1999 you call constitution, and to hand over the sovereignties that are detained by that constitution back to the owners, such that they will, in unfettered self-determination, decide what they do with their sovereignties in two stages. First is, there may be some of them who want to federate, form a fresh union away from the union of 1999, away from the union of 1914, currently defined by 1999 Constitution. It is in those two stages. You must go back to the preamble for you to know what needs to happen now. Anybody who is talking about a new constitution for a federation, that person is an illiterate, even if he's a professor of law. We are of course going to answer those I think there are 9 of them, the 9 legal experts, the consultants that National Assembly has appointed to lead them in the journey into the forest. We're going to respond to them publicly, like we responded to Olisabakoba. Anybody who is talking about a constitution for a federation is an illiterate. A federation is a union of constitutions. The federating units you must identify first, because you are talking about lands and people that will be aggregated into one political union. And so you must identify the Yoruba in Yoruba land, the Ijaw in Ijaw land. They are the ones exclusively invested with the authority to federate, to decide whether to federate and the terms of the federation. That is what they call constituent powers. National Assembly does not have constituent powers. They were elected to make laws. Their legislative mandate is limited to lawmaking. Every role they play in venturing into making of constitution or remaking is treason against the rest of us, and we've told them, and we're not going to tell them any more than we've already told them. We're going to carry on in what we are doing, and with the collapse of the constitution now, the owners of the sovereignties are going to act unilaterally. They are thinking that we have to wait until they agree for us to have a meeting. We don't need any meeting with them. We've told them. The owners of the economic assets that are detained by Nigeria can take those economic assets right now. The guns they need to protect themselves in their spaces, in their natural spaces. That constitution was the reason they couldn't touch gun before. Today that constitution is dead. So the consequence of the situation, the consequence of our victory over that constitution is that the union and the rules of the union, these are two different things. The fact of union and the rules of the union are now out of the way. What are those rules? You say you are Imo State and Abia State and all those things are creations of that constitution. You say you are National Assembly, creation of constitution. You say you are police, Nigerian army, all creations of that constitution. Council chairman, constitution. Governor, constitution. Exclusive list from 1 to 68. It is that constitution. It is in that exclusive list that the oil and gas of Niger Delta is now the property of some stupid federal government, some illicit federal government. Our federation collapsed at the point Gowon and his co-travelers fractured the federation. From the day they were fractured into 12 states, the federation died. So where is that federal government coming from when we don't have a federation? So that federal government that is now the controller of and the owner of all these economic assets and the controller of all the guns in the land and the controller of infrastructure, the controller of election, the controller of ports, the controller of all those 68 items. The implication for what has happened now is that we have no union as of today, and we have no constitution that can retain our economic assets or forbid us from touching God. In the altar call that will issue, those who have woken up, quite a number have woken up, we can assure you, are going to come along the entire second quarter. We'll be making a formal announcement. I think we're going to have an event, before that 31st of March in 2024 to open the portals for those who agree with us from all across the length and breadth of Nigeria, the Alliance territory, all across the Alliance territory of Nigeria. The Hausa will come in another layer. They're already doing what they need to do, but we have to get done with what we are doing so that they can be properly empowered, properly equipped. They will have our support to assert their own sovereignty and their own right to self-determination from the 1804, from when it was confiscated by the invader with Mandam Fodio and his gang. And so we have arrived at that constitutional logjam. When you hear constitutional logjam, many think that a trailer will fall on East-West Road. No. Constitutional logjam is where we have arrived, in which the National Assembly is running helter-skelter to write the constitution because the other one is dead. Emeka Anyoko and his co-travelers are running around to write another constitution. You heard what in the opening remarks in that Lagos colloquium to tell you the kind of sinister situation we have. In his opening remarks, Emeka Anyoko says that Nigeria has only two options: either to adopt the 2014 conference that did not discuss the basis of union and the terms of union. They refused to, Jonathan convened them to examine the foundation upon which we are building. They decided on their own that they will not examine that foundation. That is not up for discussion, the question of our unity. That was their first decision on the floor of the conference. So that 2014 conference did not, that was why Nina stayed away, that was why we all stayed away. Now you say that Nigeria, that we can only choose between adopting that. And why are we rejecting it? Why are we rejecting 2014? So that we who are in can understand it fully. Three reasons, three major reasons. The terms of reference that they finally smuggled in as what will prevail from the office of Secretary of Government, Pius Anyim at the time. The terms of reference is that whatever they discuss will be integrated into the existing constitution. That already defeats the entire purpose, because you are now holding that 1999 constitution sacrosanct. That whatever that conference, national conference of 2014, whatever they decide, any resolutions they pass, any decisions they take will be incorporated. That means the National Assembly will amend the constitution to accommodate what they can accommodate from it. Terms of reference. Then the matter of representation. Reason number two, why Ninas will not touch it, no matter how they shout, no matter how they cry. Reason number two is that the representation, the people who came to discuss, were not the owners of the sovereignty in the sense required to invest constituent power. The basis of representation was the structures created by the criminal enterprise of states, 33 states, delegate of states, 7 and 7 local government areas, geopolitical zone. That was all. And then special interests, civil society. Are they the owners of the sovereignty? The British avoided the owners of the sovereignty in 1914. Lancaster House avoided the owners of the sovereignty when they were now discussing with the politicians they are trained. All the military regimes avoided all the conferences from after Abure. All the conferences had been avoiding the owners of the sovereignty. Had Yoruba and or Ijo or Igbo ever been invited to any meeting by the Nigeria that's occupying their sovereignty, that is confiscating their sovereignty and conscripting into a political union? No. So they want to now pretend that gathering of their own nominees in 2014 was sufficient representation for all of us, so that we don't need to waste time anymore to go and discuss anything. And then Emeka Anyaoku says that we have to choose between that conference report and the setting up of some kind of constituent assembly elected on why do you go to electing constituent assembly when you have not organized, you have not identified the units that want to federate? The default, the where we are now is that the collapse of that constitution has brought us to no union. We're in a no union situation. They will not understand it until it's way too late. It's already too late for them. Yadudu suspected that would be their situation. That was why he raised the alarm in 2020 when he said that if this force majeure proceeds, that the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria will be unhinged. We successfully launched what we had in mind. The legal basis of the Federation is unhinged, so that National Assembly is looking for replacement. The agents of Britain and the Caliphate gathered in Lagos to join them. And so, in pointing us to those two options, Emeka Anyaoku is looking at drafting of constitution as the first order of business, whereas there are two other businesses that you must do before you come to the question of documenting the outcome. What are those two processes? Go back to the preamble. You divide it into three. We, the people of Federal Republic of Nigeria. No, stop there. Who are the we? You had Oladipo raising that question in his interview. You must identify the we. It must be Yoruba coming with their lands and their people into a discussion. It must be Ijo coming with their lands and their people into discussion. It must be Igbo. It must be Beron. It must be Tif. It must be Urobo. It must be Edo. It must be Anan. It must be Efik. Everybody on his ancestral space. Those are the only people that qualify for we the people. I saw one of the journalists interviewing Victor Atta on channels, saying that are they not Nigerians? So any group of people you gather in Oshodi Market can go to a hotel and become we the people for everybody. That is the first big question. Who are the we the people? If we can't answer that question, we are proceeding to nothing. Any group of people that gather to say they are discussing my future, if they are not coming with their lands and their people in consequence of their sovereignty, no matter, even if they go and bring all the former government before, bring them back to life, bring all the presidents that died before, to say they are the ones, because anybody who gets the Nigeria, the elder statesman, if they knew the solution to the problem, we would. So no matter how much they parade themselves as the organizers of society for fraud, they do not understand what the problem is, and the few that understand are being dishonest. The two options that Emeka Anyoko offered lands us in the same result of let's go and write constitution. It is when you have identified the owners of these sovereignties that will become one political union. You come to the second big question of the one that Bola Ige raised. Have they agreed to be in one political union? And you can only arrive at that by referendum. There's no other way. Anybody who tries any other thing they try will be attacked with more vigor than we are doing this 1999 constitution. Any other thing they try to bring that will not respect these parameters, this sequence of going from identifying the we the people to getting them to resolve by meeting. You can't solemnly and firmly resolve to be indivisible union without any meeting. It is that meeting of the Yoruba with their sovereignty in their hand, sitting with the Ijo sovereignty in his hand, sitting with Bero and Igbo and Edo. That is the only meeting that can. And they can't go to that meeting if their people have not spoken in a referendum. That's why we say two-stage, multi-regional, the Yoruba will sort out that question at home. It's not INEC that will conduct that referendum for them. There must be the populace, the Yoruba people will say we want to be in union or we don't want to be in union. The other people will do the same. It is when they have committed to being in union that you now come to the second question of the terms of the union. Okay, we are going to be in union. Are we to be in 36 states and 7 and 4 local government areas and 3 tiers of government? To have 68 items on the exclusive list that tie our hands? That is in that third question. You have identified the constituents, the ones who are going to federate with their lands and the boundaries with amongst them. However they arrange themselves, like in the lower Niger, you saw the map of 1885, identifying Edo land, Urobo land, Igbo land, and all of those lands. There is a charter of relationship binding them. The same thing in the middle belt. You have identified Tiv land, Idoma land, Jukun land, Berom land. There is a charter of relationship binding them. It is at that first layer that they will sort out all of those things and come as a unit when they are now discussing with the rest after they have agreed, their people have agreed to be in union. So it is in the third leg that you then sort out all those details. That 68 items of exclusive list, I'll be surprised if more than 5 will survive in that kind of a meeting. These 36 states, I'll be surprised if we have more, 4 or 5 units. Even if it becomes 8 or 9 or 10, because some people now want to do more for themselves. Certainly, it has to be their decision. Certainly, we're not discussing taxes. Certainly, nobody will mention local government area because it will be internal to them. It is in that third compartment of discussing these details that you draw the lines. Yes, we are going to be formation. Yes, we are going to have these few items to leave for the union office. Yes, we are going to have A, B, C, D. You bring this, you take that. The citizen, what are the basic, what are the minimum? Where does the right of the citizen end? Where does the right of state begin? Today we don't have all of that because they just wrote something in chapter 2 and took it away in section 6. were slaves under the current regime, with no right to anything, including the right to life. That's why people are being killed without consequences. It is when you have sorted out all of this that you now come to another room to say, gentlemen, all these agreements, let us write it down in a manner that everybody and the future generation can understand it. It is in that writing it down that you have a document you can call constitution. Of course, you take it to referendum thereafter. And before you come to where you are writing that one union constitution, the ones that agree to federate will already have had their constitutions. When we were going to independence in 1960, did we not have the constitution of Western region made out, the constitution of Eastern region made out, the constitution of Northern region made out, before they went to Lancaster House as 3 different countries that were going to discuss whether or not, and if yes, how? So we are back to that stretch we were from 1951 at this time. But the joy of it is that if the people we are talking to do not summon themselves and rally themselves, even if they have to do doctrine of necessity, we are no longer bothered about what they have to do to come to that table. That's the only thing. It is the onus is on them to come to set up that meeting. We are no longer keen. We've been waiting for them since 1999, and even long before, since after Aburi, we've been waiting to have a meeting to sort out this matter. They were pointing guns at us, thinking that nothing could be done. But now we have done something that is bigger than gun. They are the ones who have to convince us that we can still be in union. You saw Tambuwal come to town, say, this matter is hotter than I thought. We have to go tell everybody now, do doctrine of necessity so that the people can. They now all realize they're in trouble because the default, the big joker in our hand, there's nothing they can do about it at this point. It's too late. The big joker in our hand is that if no meeting happens, if they do not themselves and come to meet us, even if we decide to sit under mango tree in Ede Araba, the union is at an end as we speak. The sovereignties are on the table as we speak, to be taken by those who organize themselves, along with the guns to defend themselves. They require nobody else's permission to do all of this, I'm telling you, and that is what will happen if they do not find some means and mechanism for convincing us that we could still be in union. We are convinced now that we can't be in union with people who owe it a duty of faith to kill us. That's the Sharia we have identified. No. We're not going to have anything to do with those ones. Feudalism. No. And since the instrument that locked us all down before has been defeated, the reality is no union. And we are going to move from this altar call. We are moving expeditiously to freeing ourselves from whatever is left of their shackles that have been broken. If they convince sufficient numbers of us by referendum to say we can still do it, the onus is now on them. We are not part of those looking for how to organize meeting, because they think that we are waiting for when the transition we're talking about is if they wake up in time, they organize themselves, and there are sufficient numbers of our people are convinced that we can do without the transition. We don't need no transition for Yoruba to sit back in Yoruba land and ask everybody else to dress back. But in closing, you can see the roles that our own people had played over time, from before independence to all of what had happened in 1967. Make a map of Nigeria, see the role of Gowon, see the role of Danjuma, see the role of Hussein, see the role of Obasanjo. See the role of our own people that are swearing to defend and uphold this constitution since 1999. They are the ones holding us down, including the ones that went to contest the election under that constitution. They are the ones holding us down, including the church leaders that asked people to go to get PVC at a time we had closed door sessions with them to explain these same things to them, including the lawyers who you saw them in their numbers at the tribunal when the election petition was going on. 50 senior advocates to one presidential candidate. They are the ones. You saw what Olisa Abokoba did. You saw what Michael Zekome was doing for them. The same theory that Olisa Abokoba tried to market for a position that Mwabweze had abandoned since 2013 when we challenged him, say our sovereignty resides with us, it's not with government. Olusegun comes in 2023 to reintroduce it. Mike Ozekome comes again to reinforce it. You can see where they come from. Look at those consultants they have hired now. They all know what we are talking about, but their money will not come if they can stand with us. They want to go and share that how many billion that Benjamin Kanu and co had yanked off the treasury. For an exercise they know will go nowhere. They will share that money, waste our time, trying to get to 2027 election under this constitution. That's what they are struggling to do now, to make it look like they've answered us and they're going to the next thing. And so we have to be conscious of the fact that the major enemy we have to get out of the way now. We have defeated the Fulani and their British sponsors with the collapse of this constitution. They are enforcers in our spaces. They are enforcers in our spaces. Those willing tools that were identified by several brokers are the ones we must have in mind as we gather in this altar call and march towards the joint jailbreak that will follow without further ceremonies. I stop here. Thank you.
So, question and comments.
I have a comment, if that's okay, Dafe.
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead.
This is a very good topic, and the one about food, embargo on food, because when we look at the revolutions in the past, French Revolution, it was because of the cost of food. Russian Revolution, it was economic problems and food. Chinese Revolution, economic problems and food. The one of Sudan, I think it was the cost of bread and also economic problems. So it's food, and we are right there at the cusp, and people are going to want change. They're not to be as docile as they used to be. So that was one point. And then the other one was, as Fulani are extremely wicked. I've never seen this kind of thing, because Tony, the spokesman, he mentions a siege that happened in Samaria. But the one that they're doing now, to me, is possibly worse in terms of not only are they burning farms, they're setting farms alight, killing farmers, stealing the crops, but they're also getting the rural communities to pay them money in order to be able to even access their farms, if they even allow them to it. I've never heard of something like that. So the Fulani are really very wicked, and they want our land, and we also have to be as determined as them that they will not have our land. So that's all I have to say. I yield the mic.
Thank you for that comment. Any more question or comments? If you have a comment, tap your mic twice or raise your hand, and you will be invited to take your question or the comment. Okay, in the absence of any comment or question, Dr. Pakrebo, please unmute your mic for key points. You have less than 5 minutes to do that, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening all. I was shocked. In fact, I couldn't just say a word. I know I was not just the only one when the Nina spokesperson was just in his element, breaking it down, going down memory lane. So without much ado, let me just quickly go to the action point. It's quite laughable that a country like Ukraine, war-torn Ukraine, that is fighting to survive, fighting Russia in the Eastern Bloc, has suddenly reached out to Nigeria, offering tons of wheat as a donation to help us fight an impending crisis. And I begin to wonder, is that just free, or it was one of those scams where money could just grow wings and take flights? Nigeria is now at the stage where it needs to rely on outside help, even from countries involved in serious war, where their people are being killed, and we claim we are in peacetime. One very unique thing I noticed, I will call it sinister, that the Fulani introduced. is a strategic way of fighting war using food war, and it's a two-pronged attack using starvation until submission campaign and Scotch-Ed policy. I will explain this. Now, food is very, very crucial. The soldiers need food to fight. But in this case, it's the civilians. Down south, our soils are very fertile. So they burn down our farms. Farmers can't go to farm. Poison everything, kill animals, kill people. These people have to rely on the North, the Fulanis. Of course, when they hold back, starvation until submission. So that way, we will break down. The Scotch-Ed policy is an old Dinde strategy. They use it to delay the enemies. They burn down everything, crops, livestock, kill human beings, poison every well. So it delays. So they are using this two-pronged attack. On our people. The governors in the north are fully aware. That's why they can make it bold to say that there was that funny character from Niger State, that the food are theirs. If they want to waste them, so be it. That they will stop the food from coming down south. You know, so food war is at its best here, according to the Fulani Caliphate. They are using it as a weapon to bring us down in the south. But what I fear most is the Scotch-Ed policy as a military strategy being used by the Fulani, because this is what we see. I think of recent, you saw what happened in Delta State. The whole story is just murky. Oh, people killed soldiers or what, but we know the hand of the Fulanis and the British is there. And my joy there is Ogbaro local government area of Anambra State. They all came out, the youth, the community in its entirety, and they chased out the Fulani herdsmen. I believe most of us heard it, and I saw a video recording of it. 5 minutes they were on the road. From what I counted, close to about 5,000 cows. 5 minutes procession. So you can see people have started taking their destiny in their hands, and they came out ready to die. And you could see these Fulani herdsmen being escorted out of their community. So if other communities around the country in the south start taking this bold initiative, I think we are going to have a headway, because the stance is no longer just jaw. It's time for action. So we'll be repeating this over and over, but these Fulani herdsmen, they've been so emboldened in recent times. The killings just going on. A school in Asaba, Fulani herdsmen went there, raided the school. Of course, we have policemen there, we have soldiers, and nothing is happening. They all have guns. So it's this Scotch-Ed policy and food war, two-pronged attack that they've introduced that's really giving them this boulder, because people have to eat. Just like what Lamido said years back. Is it the vulcanizer from Akwa Ibom? Is it the bus driver from Osun State that will sit down and start thinking of how he's going to free himself? That the elites will continue to control what's going on in the country. But I think you overestimated their intelligence, and what Ninas is doing is right on track. Without much ado, I think I yield the mic here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Please, Justina, you have the floor for closing remarks. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Welcome everybody. For the closing remark, I want to first of all say a very big thank you to our co-convener. Thank you so much, sir. Coming before your tutelage every Tuesday, you really illuminate plenty things. This Nigeria of falsehood and lies, this Nigeria of pretense, and I thank God for our lives, as you said, that this union has come to an end. I want to comment on starvation as a weapon of war, how that the Niger State governor has already given instruction that their food should be kept for them, and all the pretense in Nigeria that the North is building irrigation, fertilizer, with the exclusion of everybody else, and they're taking money freely from the treasury and saying they are making sure, they're trying to make sure that there is food security for Nigeria. This explains why everything is about the North in Nigeria. From tonight's meeting, I feel so sorrowful that in this modern day, even as they have cheated our fathers in the old, this day people will see, a platform like Nina's that is a salvation. This is a salvation platform for all of us, people from the South, even those ignorant people that are not even benefiting anything. You still believe in this Nigeria of fraud and pretense. I want to appreciate God that this marriage, illicit marriage for that matter, is going to come to an end. At the North, every time is the one that is being considered to third majority for everything, and they are the ones that have compromised our security, that have brought people from other places and destroyed Nigeria the way they liked. And thank God that we have identified those feudal lords, this tribe that wants to kill everybody and own our land. I want to appreciate God for this platform. Thank you so much. I yield the mic.
Thank you, Justina. Mr. Nnadi, please, do you have any more comments before the announcement to end today's section?
Yeah, nothing but to thank those who have been coming. We can assure everybody that these numbers will not count because these things are recorded and being replayed. I'm sure you saw one that's already become video. Some of them more will come, and they will begin to travel on their own strength. There will be times that people will gather in town halls only for the purpose of playing these audios and videos from these meetings, because they will be looking frantically for answers. So we're not wasting our time. We are putting together what that multitude will, what will propel that multitude at the time they join Jailbreak, from this altar call, the critical mass that will then do the needful, because there's nothing standing their way. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your attention. I yield the mic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say a very big thank you to everyone that has made out time to come for this clubhouse meeting in spite of their busy schedules. These are the announcements of our activities through the week. For us to work effectively and efficiently, we will be having joint clubhouse sections together at 7 p.m. Nigerian time on Tuesdays like this. And on Saturdays, we'll be having the Daughters of Truth on Facebook and YouTube at 5:30 p.m. Nigerian time. Please, we are all encouraged in the immediate task of massively disseminating Nina's project materials to all our people. We are to sensitize them via the Nina's website, Nina's Voice on YouTube. We have over 300 videos, and we are encouraged to watch and share widely. For further information, call on the Nina Secretariat on 0912 993155. The second number is 090 6472 0016. At a count of 5, this clubhouse will be shut down. And the countdown begins. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye and God bless you. See you on Saturday.